This is a tutorial for the Senior Sportsmanship League in regards to the use of Garage61, which is a telemetry app that allows you to compare your inputs in your performance at various tracks against members of your team, drivers that you want to follow, or general drivers within the iRacing population that you want to compare your laps to. That allows you to learn and compare by comparing faster laps to your lap times to learn how the other drivers are achieving their speed through their different inputs. So signing up for Garage61 is relatively simple, although it's now not well documented. The Garage61.net is the website. Go to Garage61.net and follow the instructions. Essentially, it will require you to identify your iRacing account. You'll have to put in your email and a password, give them their iRacing account ID number, and then you'll download their agent, meaning the Garage61 agent, and then if your telemetry is turned on in iRacing, you can then run some laps and it will start recording your laps, and you can compare those laps to other drivers' laps and all of the other inputs. I'm going to show you that process here. Assuming that you've signed up for Garage61, you'll see a screen that looks somewhat similar to what you see here for mine. It will come up with all of your recent activity. Here you see that I had some practice about 3 hours ago at Road Atlanta. I also tried to run some improved laps at Suzuka. So I'm going to go to the Suzuka performance or laps that I ran 4 hours ago, and I'm going to show you what that graph or what that information looks like. So I'm going to click on this gray arrow here, and it's going to give me all of the times that I ran here at Suzuka. So I ran there 3 weeks ago. I started there. Then 5 days ago, I turned to 202. Practiced 2 days ago. I improved my lap time to 201.9. Then 2 days ago, after I turned to 201.9, I turned to 201.6. Took a rest and came back today and turned to 2.965. Then I did some more practice and improved it to 2 minutes and 9.40, which happened to be the fastest recorded in our team. So I'm going to go to that lap, which is, I'm going to highlight that essentially, and we're going to see the actual telemetry graph or output. So you can see all of the laps that I turned here. So you can, this is practice. I'm doing odd laps and I'm running off track. I'm kind of testing the limits of the car. Finally, I'm able to complete some laps, and I finished a nice lap here of 2 minutes and 9:40. So I'm going to analyze that. So I'm going to, which is my fastest lap. It'll only record the laps as their fastest if you have no off tracks. So you go over here to your analyze, click your analyze, and then you're going to create a new analysis. All right, now I'm going to expand this to full screen so you can see it better. So essentially we have the track map here, and you can see the dot. So as you move your mouse cursor around, you can move the dot all the way across and around and complete the lap. So you can also see over here in the graph that the position of the dot on the track has a corresponding position on the graph. So here's the start, here's coming on to the start finish, and here's the start finish more or less right here, I guess, right there. So you can see we start the lap at around 130 miles per hour, and that's the top graph. The top graph is speed. The second one down here is throttle. The next one is brake. The fourth one is the gear that you're in. The fifth one is your RPM. And the final one down at the bottom is your steering wheel angle. So essentially we start off with 130 miles an hour. We accelerate up to a peak of 161. You can see that just before that happens, or just right after that, I lift, and it's simultaneously when I lift, I hit the brakes. So you can see my brake curve looks pretty classic. It goes all the way up to a full 86%. It also tells me the position on the track. I'm hitting my brakes exactly at 1956. That's a reference in feet, and that will give you an idea if you want to compare it to other drivers. So you can see all of my inputs. You can see my braking input here. I'm off throttle, back on throttle. I've obviously downshifted down here to the fourth area. You can see I'm down in third gear. You can see the cursor down in third gear. Essentially, I'm starting to put some more steering input, and I'm going through the S's here. You can see I'm accelerating, giving it some gas, not giving it some gas. I touch the brakes here just to bring the front end down a little bit. Then I come around in the left-hand corner and rise up and reach a peak of about 136 miles per hour. And then we have to make that right-hand turn, etc. And you can see down here, the lowest speed on the track is at the hairpin. We go through there at 38 miles per hour. We accelerate up to the spoon corner, which is just before you enter, about 146 miles per hour. You can see our top speed on the last straightaway was 161. So we don't quite reach that on the last part of the last straight. We're just before we make that left-hand turn, we peak at about 158, maybe 157. Then we come down and we go through the chicane and repeat the whole process. So you can see all the braking points. So right now it just tells us what happened and what I did. You can see the hardest braking was 100% as I entered the hairpin. I also used, I guess I used 98%, 99% as I was going through the spoon. Maybe I overbraked at that point. I might be able to see that there's some time to be gained by not pushing it at that much brake. I also hit close to 100% braking as I approached the chicane. So you can see all the gearing selections that I have, but let's compare it to another driver. So I'm going to go over here to the configure button and configure that, and I'm going to hit the add laps. All right, so the add laps are going to give me, if I want to do that, I can hit teammates. I'm going to see the teammates for Senior Sportsmanship League is right there, and I'm going to hit apply. Now that's going to give me all of the drivers' times and inputs for this season. It won't. I can look at previous seasons if I want, but this one has a filter that just shows us this season. So you can see that I have the best lap so far of the team at 2 minutes and .940. Very close behind, not a surprise, is William Smithen, and right behind him is Pierre Bennett, and then Richard Franco. So Steve Karkner is running here. But let's see, just a little over a second slower. So let's compare, for example, and see. Steve Karkner is a very fast driver, so let's just check, and we'll check his box, and we'll compare our lap to his. So we'll put a check mark here, and we'll apply. All right, so then we have to analyze selective laps, and you can see here that my line is the red line and Steve's is the blue line. So down here at the bottom on the left, you can see I'm just a straight line. So we're not comparing, the comparison to my time is the same. But the blue line is how much slower he is than me, or how much faster the blue line would be below my red line. So basically, as we enter the straightaway, you can see I take a much tighter entry. I'm not going way out wide. This track has a little bit more speed if you keep it close to the wall as you're coming onto the straightaway, and you can see I pick up considerable amount of time just through that part. So here we are, and you can see we just gain a whole, not much. We're pretty much turning maybe only 1 mile an hour difference down the straightaway. Now the biggest difference here is you can see he hits his brakes and lifts at 1,810 feet, and I hit my brakes at 1,932. So what is that? 1830 versus 1940. So almost 100 feet later, I hit my brakes and I lift. And that makes a big difference, and you can see a jump in time. So all of a sudden, my lap time is 0.338 seconds faster than his already, and we've already only entered the first turn. Now, in terms of his brake trace, you can see not a whole lot different. Steve has a habit of more gradually applying his brakes rather than rapidly applying it as I do, but it seems to work very well for him. His pattern is a little bit very similar on the second part as they enter this long curve. And essentially, let's take a look here. we can expand this area for more detail. So we take the beginning here, hit the left cursor on the mouse, or left button on the mouse, drag to the right, and now we've expanded this area, and we can look at Steve's braking trace versus my braking trace. Remember, he's blue and I'm red, so I'm looking here at the red line. I come up more quickly. He obviously releases his brakes earlier. I keep my brakes, I'm much more of a trail braking application, and I'll just gradually apply brakes again. So I pretty much am trail braking through this whole corner section, whereas Steve hits this as two different brake applications. The one application to bring it into the first part of the curve, another application to slow it down for the second part of the curve. So that's pretty interesting. Obviously, you can see the differences in speed because I hit the brakes later. He actually gets faster speed here at 113 miles an hour in mid-corner, primarily because he was not on the brakes during that section. I was trail braking, etc. And I get on my gas a little bit earlier than he does, so I continue to gain time, as you can see. So let's go back to configure, move the cursor to configure, and go back to analyze laps, view full lap, and now we're going to see it. So essentially, as we come through the S's, pretty much Steve and I are running about the same speed or same time. That same 0.3 seconds that we gained on the entry to turn 1 is pretty much the same as what we ended up with. So we pretty much are the same position that we were at the entry to turn 1. Now, here in this uphill section, which is a sweeping left-hand turn, I again start gaining more time on him. And in this point, I gain from being, 0.373 to 0.9, so almost a half a second, just through this one section of the turn. This is that one part where you have to be very careful you don't run off on the right hand side. It takes a lot of finesse to go through this corner. You have to get on the throttle early. You can see now there's another aspect. If you look, you can examine the lines, and you can see that Steve was way further left when he entered this area than I was. I entered as far to the right as possible, which gave me a more open entry, and therefore I could get onto the throttle area. Let's see if that's in fact what happened. Let's go back to here, and we're going to take a look and see. Oh my, look at the difference in speed. So if I take this and drag this section, I can then see that I'm on the throttle longer, I'm faster, and I'm on the throttle earlier because I start to corner further to the right. So that speed carries all the way through and makes quite a significant difference in lap time. So following again, go back to the full lap, and you can see Steve pretty much stays even with me through the next section of the track. So right-hander and through the hairpin, basically not a whole lot of difference in lap time. I gain a little bit of time on him through the spoon. He starts at 0.9, finishes at 1.1, so I gain about 0.2 of a second going through that corner. And down the straightaway, you can go up here to the speed. You can see because I had a little bit better exit coming through the spoon, I'm doing 147, he's doing 146, so not a lot of difference. Now, for some reason, I go through this corner considerably faster, so I gain a little bit more time. And as we approach the chicane, we're pretty much, I'm about 1.3 seconds faster. And as usual, he's always faster through the chicanes than I am, so he makes up almost 0.2 of that through the chicane and finishes the lap. So you can see I'm looking at all of these areas. So if I was Steve, I'd say, okay, looks to me like I was faster than Strout through this corner. So what happened there? Well, Strout is in red, I'm in blue. I stayed in 5th and he went to 4th. Interesting. So Strout and I were both, Steve and I were both in 5th, and I downshifted into 4th in anticipation for this corner, and Steve continued to take that corner all the way through in 5th. Interesting. That seems to be slightly faster because he carried more speed and he gained a little bit of time on me through that section. Going back here, You can see we talked about the fact that I was further to the right, which made a big difference. That's the basic difference there. You can see our braking points are almost the same, except there's one section right here through the spoon. It's quite interesting. I'm actually using my brakes, and he's not hitting his brakes at all. So let's expand this area right after these. Well, let's take the whole thing. So essentially, this is the entry to the spoon. You can see we start applying the brakes pretty similar. He does that more gradual application. I do that more rapid application. But our braking trace looks very similar on that section. He goes much wider and does not hit this first part of the apex. So I'm gaining a little bit of speed on him through here. I have a little bit tighter. However, he catches back up here. I gain a little bit more speed through here because what is the difference? Interesting. You'll see because I was able to keep the car further to the left, I was able to get back on the gas momentarily here for this section. So you can see the throttle application starts here. He's coasting through this section here, and that's one of the reasons why I gained time in this corner on him. Also, you can see I'm on the throttle much earlier on exit, and I'm much tighter, so I took a later apex, and I didn't have to track out as wide, so I was able to stay on the throttle and initiate the throttle earlier. However, there is one interesting aspect here. You can see I'm applying my brakes here in the middle of the spoon. So after I track out to the right, he's not using brakes at all through this corner, and actually reaches this point, which is the beginning of track out section, and is almost the same speed. Let's go back and look at view the whole lap, and you can see coming out here, because of his technique, even though I gained some time through the corner, maybe about almost about a second, because of his application of failure to, or the fact that he did not use his brakes in the middle of the spoon, he actually exited the corner at the same speed as I did. So that's a very important factor, because he now is going down this long straightaway at almost exactly the same speed. So here he hit the brakes as he approached this corner. I did not. So I took this pretty much, I just lifted and used the lift to set the front end. He touched the brakes slightly. The application of the brakes slowed the car down more, and I went through that corner considerably faster. You can see I went through at about 153. He went through at 143. That's 10 miles an hour. Considerable difference, and I carried that speed down that little short chute. Again, through the chicanes. Steve always beats me through chicanes. But essentially, there's a lot to learn here. Basically, I would go back and say the biggest issue was this failure to be far to the right on the entrance to the sweeping left-hand turn. That probably was the biggest difference. If you had made that even, you would have had 0.371. You would have saved about 0.6. So his time would have been 201.4, much closer, to the total time. But there's a lot to learn here. You can see, for example, through the chicane, one of the reasons why I think Steve is always faster through chicanes, if you'll notice, my steering input in the chicane is 200. I'm almost on full lock, and somehow he managed to go through there with only 90 degrees of steering input. I guess what you could say is that's probably the result of applying throttle. So what did he do that allowed him to do that? Nothing much. Basically, our brakes look very similar. He's doing about the same speed. He takes a little later apex, gets on the throttle. Basically, he gets on the throttle earlier. And my steering lock is back here. Basically, I hit the brakes. It's a mystery to me why he always goes faster through chicanes, but he always does, and most of it is because he's able to get the car to turn without using the steering wheel as much as mine does. And I guess he's doing it with the throttle, by lifting the throttle. I was on the throttle. He lifted the throttle strategically and then got back on it just slightly earlier, and gradually applied it, and he was full throttle much earlier. So essentially, I guess that's a combination of all those things. But there is a lot to be learned from this telemetry. So going back to the full lap, you can see that all these lines mean something, and the basic technique is to take your left mouse button, hold it down, drag it, and that will give you a magnified view of the track. You can see the various tracks and see how the lines are running, and you can see all of the inputs. You can see the speed, the brake application, throttle application, so the speed, and then throttle is the second one, brake is the third, and the gear selection. So let's go back to the full lap and just see one other point that's important. You can see there's some really significant differences between which gears we're using. Steve is using fourth gear through the S's. He basically is going into third through the beginning of this section. And then he goes into fourth, and he stays fourth all the way, and actually goes all the way to that sweeping left-hander in fourth. I go down to third, same as he does. I go up to fourth, but I then come to third through this one section to bring the car further to the right. I found that downshift helps the car rotate and allows me to get the entry to the sweeper to the left with more right-hand positioning. Then we'll go back, and we're being about the same gear. He'll stay in fifth through that one fast turn. I'll downshift into fourth. I'll use second through this one section, which is the sharp right-hand corner. He'll use third. Not a lot of difference. I carry a little bit more speed through the corner. I'm at 70 miles an hour at the apex. He's at 64. So I think second helped a little bit. We get up to fifth before the hairpin. He goes through the hairpin in second. I go through in first. I hit a lot more steering input. If you go down to the bottom line there, I go to full lock. He's only using 121. He actually loses a little time on entry, so that first gear usage was a little bit faster, not a lot. Then we're pretty much the same gearing through the spoon. I upshift a little bit earlier from fifth to sixth. I carry sixth through this corner. All I do is, he carries sixth through this one long sweeping left-hander. I downshift into fifth. We pretty much go through the chicane, equally gearing. So the biggest difference is I'm using first gear in the hairpin. I'm using second gear in the sharp right-hand turn before the hairpin, and I'm using third for a small section of the S's to allow the car to get further to the right and a better entry to the sweeping left-hand uphill corner. So, like I said, there's lots to be analyzed here, lots to be learned. My recommendation is that you take a lap and you compare it to a faster driver, and you figure out what he's doing, and you try that and focus a few laps on just focusing on changing what you do in that one corner compared to the other driver. Then continue that to the next corner and sooner or later you'll find that you're improving your laps considerably. So that's a general tutorial of how to use the Garage61 software. There is many other things that you can do with this software. If you want to compare more than one driver, you can take, for example, let's take a look at Bill Smithen and put him up there as well. Now we have all three, and we can analyze all three, and you can see now Bill is the dark purple line, and you can see, for example, right here, look at how much faster through this one corner. Look at how much faster Bill is than I am and Steve. Bill is doing 109 miles an hour. I'm doing 104 up this sweeping left-hand corner. How he does that? Interesting. That's for this to be analyzed. So if you want to take that section and say, okay, how in the heck is Bill getting 5 miles an hour quicker than I am through there? You can see that essentially he hardly lifted on this one section. Both Steve and I get a full lift, and Bill basically takes this not quite flat out, but he uses 75% throttle, so he finesses the throttle a lot more than us. And look at the difference in the time. He's doing 122, I'm doing 119, he's doing 138, and I'm doing 135, all because of his finessed use of the throttle through that one corner. You go back to the rest of the lap, not a lot of difference. So basically, that's the difference between my time was 2 minutes and 9:40. His was 2 minutes and 9:56. He was faster than I was there. You can see that shows up as a declining line. He's starting to gain time on me. You can see he's also faster through, or at least through the entry to the hairpin, but not the exit. So we go in, and essentially I come out of the exiting the hairpin a little faster, but he goes in faster. You can see his basically where he lost time to me was through the spoon. So why? Again, hard to say. This is a very complicated area. Looks to me like I was on the throttle and he was not. Between the apex and the out track, I was on the throttle slightly for just a short period of time to gain a little bit more speed, and basically through that one small section, I'm doing 96 miles an hour versus his 85. So the spoon section, the middle part of the spoon section, is the only difference between his lap and my lap time in terms of me being faster than him. Other than that, we're pretty much very equal. Going down the long straightaway, he's at actually was 1 mile an hour faster than I am down the long straightaway. Going through the long sweeper, he's doing 143. I'm doing 143, so we're almost exactly equal. He actually goes through that corner a little bit faster. So essentially, the biggest difference is the biggest gain that I had was the time I gained on him through the spoon. The rest of the track, he was either equal or faster than I was. So you can see that we're almost exactly the same lap time. Just some places he was a little faster, some places he was a little slower. Not a lot of difference. So that's a tutorial. Like I said, there's many other features to this that you'll get to know as you use it, but those are the most important. And you can go back after you're finished doing this, and you can go back to your laps. You can also check and see all of the tracks and see what was going on there. You can check setups. For example, if you go to the laps again, and let's just do an overview. And let's go back and see, for example, what I said for the Suzuka time. Let's go ahead and look at that section again. Just as a review, go down, find the fast lap, analyze it, create a new analysis, configure, add laps. Let's pick Pierre, for example, Pierre Vinet, apply, and you'll see for whatever reason, he's not using the league setup. I'm using the 55 Plus Corvette Qualifying V version 2.3, which is one of our league setups that I developed. He's using what he calls Sly setup. I guess he wants to think that he's using a special setup that only he invented, which is fine. You can then, but if you want to see what that setup is, you just click on that, and all of the setup information is available. So you can compare that information, brake bias, ride height, all of the things that are available on the setup. You can compare his setup to my setup, and you can compare to see whether the conditions were the same. Track mostly cloudy, etc. Wind conditions, how much fuel he had at the time that he ran. You can also see his event, and you can see, well, what kind of lap times was he turning, or was this just one big fast lap, or did he turn a whole bunch of fast laps? So you can see most of his laps were 202s. Then he started improving, so he got 2 here in the 201s area. 201.39 was his best. But generally speaking, he's turning 202s. And, the same thing in my case. Basically, you hit the back and you look at my event, and you can see I was doing the same thing. I was off track almost all the laps, but I was turning 202s. Then I got down to 201s, and I kept trying to improve. And finally, I was able to figure out what I was doing and got down to a 200.94. Now, I don't think I would turn consistently 2-minute 940s. I would probably, in a race, be turning 201.3. So Every once in a while you get lucky and you do everything perfectly, but most of the time you turn other laps. Now, you don't have to just look at your fastest lap. You can take, for example, I can take this lap here, which is 201.352, analyze that, create a new analysis. Now let's compare it to myself. So now I can compare it to add laps, take my best time and compare it to that slower lap time and see where I was slow and what I did differently. Most everything else is the same. Analyze it and you can see, looks pretty similar. I immediately see some sections here where the faster lap is the blue line, the slower lap is the red line. So I'm looking for, through the S's, a lot of difference. The red line is lower or slower. So I made a lot better time through some sections of the S's, but generally not a lot. I'm pretty much almost exactly the same until this part. And all of a sudden I made some serious improvements from the sharp right-hander before the hairpin to the exit of the hairpin. I gained half of a second. So all of the time that I gained was from this point of the track to this point of the track. Pretty much equal the rest of the track. So basically my improvement was I was able to go through this corner better and faster, and I was able to go through the hairpin considerably faster. What did I do different? So let's take that section of the track, which is here, and let's left click, drag, carry it all the way to the exit of the hairpin, and let's see what I did different. All right, so the red again was the slower part, and the blue was the faster part. I actually broke later, but I slowed the car down more. So you can see I braked later. Let's see, I broke 78.41, 78.51. I broke 10 feet later, but I hit the brakes harder. So instead of hitting at 77-point peak, I hit 93% peak. And I was fully in the ABS. I was not in the ABS on the fast lap. And you can go down and you can see that essentially I improved dramatically because I didn't hit the brakes as hard going through this corner here. This other part is as I came into the hairpin, same thing. I hit the brakes a lot harder, and I hit the brakes later even, but I hit them a lot harder. You can see I was up at 100%. I didn't reach 100% until further down. So I kind of did a more of a progressive application of the brakes here for the hairpin, which I think is one of the secrets here is to not hit the brakes so early, but also progressively apply them more in a more gradual effect. So anyway, you can see that's the basic difference, and that was a remarkable change of half a second in just one small section of the track. So basically I'll continue to work on and making sure that I do that section of the track really, really well, and I'll keep practicing that over and over again until I master it. So again, this is the end of the tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it, and feel free to ask me any questions when we're in sessions.